Captain Hyunwoo Kim stared at the empty space where New Busan Colony should have been. His patrol ship, the Stellar Dawn, floated silently in the void. Below them, the planet Kepler 442b looked wrong. The lights that should have dotted the surface were gone. The radio signals that should have filled the air were silent. "Captain, I'm picking up some heat signatures from the main settlement," said his communications officer. "But they're strange." Hyunwoo felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "Take us down. Careful approach." The Stellar Dawn descended through the atmosphere. As they broke through the clouds, Hyunwoo saw what had happened to New Busan. The city was burning. Not the clean burn of an accident, but the dirty, smoky burn of destruction. Buildings had been torn apart. Streets were filled with debris, and there were no people. "Landing Bay 7 is still intact," reported his pilot. "Setting us down there." Hyunwoo grabbed his sidearm and emergency kit. "Full investigation team, protective gear. I want to know what happened here." They walked through the empty streets of New Busan. The colony had been home to 50,000 people just 3 days ago. Now it looked like a ghost town. Worse than a ghost town, it looked like a battlefield where only one side had weapons. "Captain, over here," called Dr. Yoonji Park, the team's science officer. She was kneeling beside a crater in the main square. "These blast patterns, they're not from human weapons. The energy signature is completely unknown." Hyunwoo examined the crater. It was perfectly round, as if something had simply removed a circle of ground and everything in it. "How many dead?" "I'm reading organic matter scattered everywhere," Dr. Park said quietly. "Thousands of people, Captain. Maybe tens of thousands." They continued their search. Every building told the same story. Families had been caught in the middle of normal life. Meals were still on tables. Children's toys were scattered in playrooms. But the people were gone, reduced to ash and scattered remains. "Captain, I found something," called Lieutenant Boram from the colony's administration building. "The security system is still running on backup power." Hyunwoo rushed to the security center. The screens showed the last 3 days of recording. He watched the final hours of New Busan Colony. The attack had come from space. Ships unlike anything in human databases had appeared without warning. They were large, angular vessels with a dark purple hull that seemed to absorb light. The ships had not attempted communication. They had not demanded surrender. They had simply begun killing. The recording showed beams of energy striking the colony from above. But worse than the destruction was what came after. The alien ships had landed and creatures had emerged. They were tall, with 4 arms and faces that looked like they were carved from stone. They moved through the ruined colony systematically. "They're hunting survivors," Hyunwoo realized with horror. The aliens had found the emergency shelters, where families were hiding. They had broken open the sealed doors and dragged people out. What they did next made Hyunwoo's hands shake with rage. They had separated the children from the adults. The children were killed first while the adults were forced to watch. "Turn it off," Dr. Park whispered. She had gone pale, but Hyunwoo forced himself to keep watching. He needed to see everything. The recording showed an alien commander standing over the bodies. It spoke into what looked like a communication device. The translation system on the security computer provided subtitles. "Pest control complete on colony designation Human 77. Breeding population eliminated. Recommend systematic cleansing of all human settlements. These creatures multiply too quickly if left unchecked." The recording ended with the aliens loading certain human bodies onto their ships. Specimens, Hyunwoo realized. They had taken people for study. "We need to find survivors," he said. "There have to be survivors." They searched for 6 hours. Finally, they heard a faint tapping from beneath the ruins of the medical center. Working together, they moved the rubble and found an emergency bunker that had been overlooked. Inside were 12 people, including Dr. Yoonji Park's colleague from the research station. The survivors told them about the attack. The aliens had called themselves the Valdris. They had not wanted anything from the colony. They had not demanded resources or surrender. They had simply wanted all humans dead. "They said we were vermin," whispered one survivor. a teacher who had been protecting 3 children in the bunker. They said our species was spreading too fast, and they needed to stop us before we became a problem. Hyunwoo helped load the Yai survivors onto his ship. As they prepared to leave, he took one last look at New Busan. 50,000 people had lived here. Now there were 12. Back on his ship, Hyunwoo composed his report to Admiral Boram Lee at Terra Command. He had to stop several times while writing it. The words seemed too small for what had happened. How do you describe the murder of an entire colony? How do you explain that aliens had killed children just to hurt their parents? When he finished the report, he attached all the security recordings. Then he sent it with the highest priority code. This was not just an attack on one colony. This was an act of war against all humanity. Admiral Boram Lee received the report at her office on Earth. She was a calm woman who had served in the military for 30 years. She had seen wars and disasters and tragedies. But as she watched the recordings from New Busan, her hands began to shake. She called an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. As the senior officers gathered in the secure conference room, Admiral Lee played the recordings. The room fell silent as they watched 50,000 people die for no reason other than existing. Recommendations? Admiral Lee asked when the recordings ended. Full investigation, suggested one general. We need to understand their capabilities. Diplomatic contact, suggested another. Perhaps this was unauthorized action by a rogue commander. Admiral Lee listened to all the suggestions. Then she stood and walked to a wall panel that had not been opened in 200 years. She placed her hand on the scanner and spoke clearly. Authorization. Admiral Boram Lee, Service Number 7749. Emergency Protocol Dragon. Confirmed genocide of human civilian population by hostile alien force. Designated Valdris. I am activating humanity's full military capacity. The panel opened, revealing a red button that had never been pressed. Admiral Lee pressed it. Across human space, in hidden bases and secret facilities, machines that had been sleeping for 2 centuries began to wake up. Humanity had been at peace for so long that most people had forgotten they had ever been anything else. The Valdris had just reminded them. The news of New Busan spread across human space like a fire in dry grass. Every colony, every space station, every human settlement received the same message. 50,000 people were dead. An alien race called the Valdris had killed them all, including the children, just because they were human. On Earth, deep beneath the Luna military complex, Admiral Jin Ho-yoon stood in a chamber that had been sealed for 200 years. The air recyclers hummed as they cleared out the stale atmosphere. Emergency lights flickered on, revealing rows of massive shapes covered in protective sheets. Sir, all systems are responding, reported Engineer Dongwoo Nam, checking readings on a control panel. The Ghost Fleet is intact. 50 dreadnoughts, all in perfect condition. Admiral Yoon nodded grimly. The Ghost Fleet was humanity's secret, ships that existed in folded space, invisible to all sensors, waiting for the day they might be needed again. That day had come. Begin the awakening process, he ordered. Full crew recall, priority alpha. Across the solar system, men and women received coded messages. Most of them were teachers, farmers, shop owners, and office workers. But they all had military training that went far beyond what normal humans possessed. They were the descendants of humanity's war machine, keeping their skills sharp in secret. Captain So-Young Hwang was working in her garden when her communication device buzzed. She looked at the message and felt her blood turn cold. She had hoped this day would never come. She had hoped humanity would never need to remember what they truly were. She kissed her daughter goodbye and told her husband she had to go away for a while. She could not tell them where or why. Within 6 hours, she was standing in a hangar beneath Seoul, looking at a fighter craft that could outrun most alien ships and carry enough firepower to destroy a city. "Welcome back, Dragon Squadron," said the hangar chief. "Your birds are ready." Meanwhile, the Valdris continued their attacks. The alien fleet struck New Seoul Colony next. This time, they broadcast the attack across galactic communication networks. They wanted everyone to see what happened to humans. The recording showed Valdris soldiers moving through the colony's residential areas. They killed systematically, methodically. They made sure to target children first, forcing parents to watch. Their commander spoke to the camera. "Let all races observe," the alien said in its clicking language. "Humans spread like a disease across the galaxy. We are cleaning up this infestation. Any race that harbors humans will be next." But the Valdris made a mistake. They assumed humans were like other peaceful species. They thought humans had no teeth, no claws, no way to fight back. They had seen human colonies for 50 years and only observed farmers and miners and researchers. They thought that was all humanity had. On the third day after New Busan, the Valdris attacked Gangnam Station, a mining facility in the asteroid belt. This time they found something unexpected. The station's mining equipment had been converted into weapons. The miners fought back with tools that could cut through solid rock. The Valdris killed them all eventually, but it took 6 hours instead of 6 minutes. The alien commander was puzzled by the resistance. According to their intelligence, humans were passive creatures who could barely defend themselves. That same day, Admiral Boram Lee called a meeting with representatives from other alien races. The meeting was held on neutral space at a trading station run by the crystalline entities. These beings were ancient and wise, and they remembered things that younger races had forgotten. "We require assistance," Admiral Lee said to the assembled aliens. "The Valdris have attacked our colonies without provocation. They are committing genocide." Most of the alien representatives offered sympathy but no help. The Valdris were too powerful, they said. Humans were too few. It was tragic, but there was nothing to be done. But the crystalline representative, an entity called Vorthak, remained silent until the others had finished speaking. Then it turned its glowing form toward Admiral Lee. "We will not interfere," Vorthak said in its singing voice. "But we remember the Sol Wars. We remember when humans nearly conquered half the galaxy. The Valdris have made a grave mistake." Admiral Lee smiled for the first time since receiving Captain Hyunwoo's report. "Thank you for your honesty, Ancient One. Tell me," Vorthak continued, "do the weapons still sleep beneath your worlds?" "They do." "And the ships that exist between dimensions? They are waking up?" Vorthak's crystalline form pulsed with light. "Then the Valdris will learn why humans chose isolation over empire. We remember your mercy, Admiral. The Valdris will soon discover what you chose mercy over." Back on Earth, engineer Dongwoo Nam worked frantically in the weapons development labs. The designs had been locked away for 2 centuries, but the principles were still sound. Humanity had developed weapons during the Sol Wars that could crack planets, boil oceans, and extinguish stars. They had chosen never to use the worst of them. "How long until the Titan cannons are operational?" asked Admiral Yoon. 72 hours for basic functionality, Dongwoo replied. "But sir, these weapons, they're designed to fight entire fleets. The Valdris don't know what they're up against." "Good," Admiral Yoon said coldly. "Let's keep it that way." Captain So Young Hwang ran her first test flight in 20 years. Her fighter responded like it had been waiting for her. The engines were quiet but powerful. The weapons were precise but devastating. Most importantly, the stealth systems worked perfectly. Her ship was invisible to Valdris sensors. "Dragon Leader to control," she reported. "All systems green. Ready for combat operations." "Copy, Dragon Leader. Stand by for mission parameters." The mission was simple in concept, but difficult in execution. Dragon Squadron would infiltrate Valdris space and gather intelligence. They needed to know how many ships the enemy had, where their bases were, and what their plans were for the remaining human colonies. But as Captain So Young prepared for the mission, another message came through. The Valdris had attacked Neo Jeju colony. 3,000 more humans were dead. The enemy was not slowing down. They intended to kill every human in the galaxy. Admiral Boram Lee watched the intelligence reports from her command center. The Valdris had 12 major fleets and controlled 47 star systems. Their technology was advanced, their ships were powerful, and their soldiers were experienced. By any reasonable military analysis, humanity was outmatched. But Admiral Lee had access to information that the Valdris did not. Hidden bases throughout human space were coming online. The Ghost Fleet was fully operational. Weapons that could destroy solar systems were being prepared for use. And across human space, ordinary colonists were revealing themselves to be highly trained soldiers. The secret was simple. Humanity had never stopped being a military species. They had just gotten very good at hiding it. Status report, Admiral Lee requested. Ghost Fleet operational in 18 hours, reported Admiral Yoon. Dragon Squadron ready for deep reconnaissance. Titan weapons charging. Colonial Defense Forces revealing full capabilities. Admiral Lee nodded. And our response to the latest attack? Captain Woojin Lee is taking the Iron Mountain to intercept the Valdris fleet returning from Neo Jeju. He has orders to leave no survivors. For the first time in 200 years, a human dreadnought was going into battle. The Valdris were about to discover that humans had been hiding their true nature. They were about to learn the difference between choosing peace and being incapable of war. Captain Woojin Lee stood on the bridge of the Iron Mountain, watching the Valdris fleet approach. The enemy ships moved in perfect formation, confident and proud after destroying Neo Jeju Colony. They had no idea they were being watched. The Iron Mountain was a Titan-class dreadnought, 2 kilometers long and armed with weapons that could shatter moons. It had been built during the Sol Wars but never used in anger. For 200 years it had waited in folded space, invisible and forgotten. Now it was humanity's answer to genocide. Enemy fleet composition, reported the tactical officer. 15 heavy cruisers, 40 destroyers, and 1 command ship. Total crew estimated at 50,000. Captain Lee nodded. The Valdris had brought a full battle fleet to destroy 3,000 human colonists. They believed in overwhelming force when fighting defenseless civilians. They were about to learn what overwhelming force really meant. Weapon status? Primary cannon charged and ready. Secondary batteries online. All systems green, sir. Communications. Open a channel to the Valdris command ship. The main screen showed the interior of the alien bridge. The Valdris commander was tall and imposing with 4 arms and skin like gray stone. Its eyes were cold and showed no emotion as it looked at the human captain. I am Fleet Commander Xeris of the Valdris Hegemony, the alien said. You are in violation of our cleansing operation. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. Captain Lee smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. I am Captain Woojin Lee of the human vessel Iron Mountain. You have murdered innocent civilians. Surrender immediately, and you will be allowed to live. The Valdris commander made a sound that might have been laughter. 1 human ship against my entire fleet? Your species truly is as foolish as it is weak. Last chance, Captain Lee said calmly. The alien commander cut the communication and immediately ordered his ships to attack. 60 Valdris warships opened fire on the Iron Mountain. Energy beams and missiles filled the space between them. The Iron Mountain did not even shake. Its shields absorbed the entire attack without effort. The Valdris weapons, designed to terrorize peaceful colonies, were like toys against human military technology. Your turn, Captain Lee said quietly. Fire. The Iron Mountain's primary weapon was a gravity cannon that could create miniature black holes. The beam struck the Valdris command ship and simply removed it from existence. One moment it was there. The next moment there was empty space and expanding debris. The secondary batteries opened fire next. Each shot destroyed a Valdris cruiser completely. The human weapons were so powerful that they vaporized the enemy ships instantly. No wreckage. No escape pods, no survivors. In less than 3 minutes, the entire Valdris fleet was gone. 60 ships and 50,000 alien soldiers had been erased from existence by a single human dreadnought. Captain Lee opened communications to all remaining Valdris forces in the system. This is the Iron Mountain. Your fleet has been destroyed. Any Valdris ships that do not withdraw from human space immediately will be eliminated. This is your only warning. The few Valdris support vessels in the system jumped to faster than light speed immediately. They carried news of the Iron Mountain's power back to their homeworld. The humans were not defenseless after all. Meanwhile, Commander Mi Kyung-shin, led her Special Forces team through the corridors of a Valdris prison ship. The ship had been captured intact by Dragon Squadron, and Mi Kyung's team was searching for human survivors from the destroyed colonies. What they found was worse than they had imagined. The Valdris had not just killed humans, they had captured many for experiments. The prison ship held 300 human civilians who had been subjected to medical tests, torture, and worse. Medical team to holding Bay 7. Mi Kyung called into her radio. We have survivors, but they need immediate treatment. The rescued humans told stories that made Mi Kyung's blood burn with rage. The Valdris had not been quick about their killing. They had taken their time, especially with the children. They seemed to enjoy causing pain to other species. Commander, called one of her soldiers from the ship's computer center. You need to see this. The Valdris computer files contained plans for the complete extermination of humanity. They had detailed maps of every human colony, every space station, every settlement. They intended to kill every human in the galaxy, and they had already begun moving fleets to do it. But the files also contained something else. Intelligence reports about other species the Valdris had already destroyed. Humans were not their first victims. They had exterminated 6 other races in the past century, all for the same reason. Those species had been spreading too fast and needed to be controlled. Mi Kyung sent the files to Admiral Hyejin Kang, who was commanding the liberation fleets. The admiral's response was immediate and clear. The Valdris were not just enemies of humanity. They were enemies of all life in the galaxy. Admiral Hyejin Kang stood in the command center of the dreadnought Thunder of Earth, watching her fleets move into position. She commanded 50 ships, each one capable of destroying entire Valdris battle groups. But more importantly, she commanded soldiers who had been trained for this kind of war. Admiral, we're receiving surrender requests from Valdris outposts throughout the sector, reported her communications officer. Negative. No surrenders accepted until all human prisoners are returned and all Valdris military assets are destroyed. Admiral Kang had read the files from the prison ship. She had seen what the Valdris did to captured humans. There would be no mercy for genocidal aliens, no matter how much they begged. The human fleets moved through Valdris space like a storm. Every military installation was destroyed. Every prison ship was liberated. Every Valdris commander who had participated in the attacks on human colonies was hunted down and eliminated. Captain So Young Hwang flew her fighter through the ruins of a Valdris base. Her squadron had destroyed the facility in minutes using weapons the aliens could not even detect. The base had been home to 10,000 Valdris soldiers. Now it was empty metal drifting in space. Dragon leader to all units, she reported. Target destroyed. No enemy survivors. Moving to next objective. The Dragons were humanity's elite pilots, and they flew ships that existed partially outside normal space. They could appear anywhere, strike without warning, and disappear before the enemy could respond. To the Valdris, they seemed like ghosts that brought death from nowhere. Back on Earth, civilian leaders watched the war reports with amazement. Admiral Boram Lee had told them that humanity possessed hidden military capabilities, but they had not understood the true scope of those capabilities. How is this possible? Asked President Su Jin-han. We have 50 ships destroying fleets of hundreds. Human military technology never stopped advancing, Admiral Lee explained. We just hid it better. During the Sol Wars, we learned to build weapons that could fight against impossible odds. We chose not to use them after the wars ended, but we never forgot how. The truth was that humanity had been preparing for this day for 200 years, not preparing for war but preparing to defend themselves if war came to them. Every human colony had hidden weapons. Every human ship had concealed capabilities. Every human citizen had military training. The Valdris had attacked a species that looked peaceful, but had never stopped being warriors. They had kicked a sleeping dragon and wondered why the sky was now full of fire. Within 2 weeks, Valdris forces had been driven from all human space. Their fleets were destroyed, their bases were captured, and their prisoners were liberated. The aliens who had called humans vermin were now fleeing in terror from human ships. But the war was far from over. The Valdris homeworld still stood, and their main fleet was still intact. They had learned that humans were dangerous, but they had not yet learned the true cost of genocide. Admiral Boram Lee stood before the holographic display showing Valdris space. Red markers showed enemy positions. Blue markers showed human fleets. The blue markers were advancing steadily toward the red markers at the center of the display. Valdris Prime, the alien homeworld, the heart of the empire that had tried to exterminate humanity. Begin Phase 2, Admiral Lee ordered. Target, complete military surrender of Valdris civilization. The dragons were going hunting. Fleet Admiral Kyung-ho Park stood at the observation deck of the massive dreadnought Final Dawn, watching the Valdris homeworld grow larger on the screen. Around him, the combined human fleet stretched across space like a steel constellation. 200 ships, each one carrying enough firepower to level continents. The Valdris had gathered their entire remaining military at their homeworld. 300 ships defended Valdris Prime, along with orbital defense platforms and surface-based weapons. It was the largest concentration of alien military power in the galaxy. Against any other species, it would have been an unbeatable defense. Against humanity, it was simply a target. Admiral, we're receiving communications from the Valdris High Command, reported the communications officer. They're requesting terms for negotiation. Fleet Admiral Park read the message carefully. The Valdris were offering to withdraw from human space, pay compensation for the destroyed colonies, and sign a non-aggression treaty. They seemed to think this was a normal territorial war that could be ended with diplomacy. They did not understand what they had done. They did not understand that they had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Send reply, Admiral Park ordered. No terms. Unconditional. Surrender only. Dismantlement of all Valdris military forces. Trial of all commanders involved in genocide operations. Full reparations to humanity. These are not negotiations. The response from Valdris Prime came quickly. The alien leaders were outraged. They accused humans of barbarism, of being no better than the violent species they claimed to oppose. They said they would fight to the last ship rather than surrender their civilization. Admiral Park showed the message to his senior staff. Captain Young-Mi Cho, his siege warfare specialist, shook her head in amazement. They still don't understand, she said. They think we want to conquer them. They think this is about territory or resources. What should we show them first? Asked Admiral Park. Dr. Sang-Woo Kim, the fleet's chief weapons officer, pulled up a display of their available arsenal. The Valdris have never seen a Starkiller weapon. Perhaps a demonstration would be educational. Admiral Park considered this. The Starkiller weapons were humanity's most closely guarded secret. They were devices that could make suns go supernova, destroying entire solar systems. Humanity had built them during the Sol Wars but had never used them. They were too terrible even for humanity's darkest hours. Target the outer system gas giant, Admiral Park decided. Something big enough to make a point, but far enough away not to threaten the populated worlds. The Starkiller was a small device, no bigger than a fighter craft. It jumped into the target system and positioned itself near the gas giant Valdris 7. The weapon worked by destabilizing atomic structure on a massive scale. When it activated, the entire planet simply stopped existing. The explosion was visible from Valdris Prime, a new star that burned for exactly 17 seconds before fading away. Where there had been a planet with dozens of moons, there was now empty space and expanding energy. Communications from Valdris Prime, reported the officer. They're asking what just happened. Tell them we removed a planet, Admiral Park replied calmly. Tell them we can remove stars if necessary. Tell them they have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. Captain Young-Mi Cho was already preparing her siege fleets for the assault on Valdris Prime. Her ships specialized in taking heavily defended positions without destroying the civilian population. It was a difficult balance, but humans had learned to fight precisely during the Sol Wars. Siege batteries ready, she reported. We can disable their orbital platforms without harming surface cities. The question is whether they'll give us the chance. The Valdris response came 30 minutes later. Their military commanders had decided to fight. They would not surrender their civilization to the human barbarians who had destroyed a planet just to make a threat. Admiral Park sighed. He had hoped the aliens would be reasonable. Now humanity would have to demonstrate why they had chosen peace over conquest 200 years ago. All ships begin Operation Dragon's Wrath. Rules of engagement: destroy all military targets, preserve all civilian targets. I want the Valdris to understand the difference between justice and genocide. The Cernlar. Human fleet moved forward in perfect formation. The Valdris opened fire first, launching thousands of missiles and energy beams at the approaching ships. The human shields absorbed the attack easily. Valdris weapons had been designed to fight other Valdris ships, not human military technology. Captain. Young Mi Cho led the first wave of attacks against the orbital defenses. Her ships moved like dancers, weaving between the massive defense platforms while their weapons precisely removed military systems. Each shot was calculated to disable rather than destroy, to capture rather than kill. Platform 7 is surrendering, reported one of her captains. They're requesting permission to evacuate. Granted. Send boarding parties to secure any intelligence materials. One by one, the Valdris orbital defenses fell silent. Not destroyed, but captured. The alien soldiers aboard the platforms found themselves prisoners of war rather than martyrs for their cause. The Valdris fleet tried to break through the human siege lines. Their ships were fast and maneuverable, designed for quick strikes against weaker enemies. But they found themselves facing human captains who had trained for this kind of battle their entire lives. Admiral Hye Jin Kang commanded the intercept fleets that met the Valdris breakout attempt. Her ships surrounded the alien fleet and methodically disabled their weapons and engines. Within hours, 300 Valdris warships were floating helplessly in space, their crews alive but powerless. "This is Admiral Kang to Valdris fleet commanders," she broadcast. "Your ships are disabled. Your crews are alive. Surrender now and you will be treated according to galactic laws of war. Continue fighting and you will be destroyed." Most of the Valdris ships surrendered immediately. A few chose to fight until their ships were completely destroyed. The human captains honored both choices, showing mercy to those who surrendered and giving quick deaths to those who preferred to die fighting. On the surface of Valdris Prime, the alien government watched their entire military disappear in a single day. The humans had not bombarded cities or targeted civilians. They had simply removed every weapon, every ship, every defense the Valdris possessed. Dr. Sang-Woo Kim studied the captured Valdris technology and shook his head in amazement. "Their weapons are actually quite advanced," he reported to Admiral Harte, "but they're designed for fighting other organic species. They have no defense against our quantum-based systems. Could they have improved?" Admiral Park asked. "Given time, perhaps." But Admiral, they never had time. They chose to start a war with humanity before they understood what humanity was capable of. The final phase of the siege began at dawn on Mardi, Valdris Prime. Human Marines, led by Commander Mi Kyung-shin, landed at strategic points around the planet. Their mission was to capture the Valdris leadership alive and secure evidence of their genocidal activities. The Valdris military tried to stop them, but human soldiers were not the same as human colonists. These were warriors trained in the art of precision warfare, equipped with weapons and armor that made them nearly invulnerable to Valdris attacks. Commander Shin's team reached the Valdris Capitol building within 6 hours. They found the alien leadership huddled in a bunker deep underground, still believing they could negotiate their way out of consequences. "I am Commander Mi Kyung-shin of the Human Defense Forces," she announced as her soldiers secured the bunker. "You are under arrest for genocide, war crimes, and crimes against sapient life. You will be held for trial under galactic law." The Valdris Emperor, a massive alien with intricate markings on his stone-like skin, tried to maintain his dignity. "You cannot do this. We are a sovereign species. You have no authority over us." "You lost that sovereignty when you chose genocide," Commander Shin replied. "You will face trial for your crimes. If you are found guilty, your punishment will be decided by the representatives of the species you tried to exterminate." Within 48 hours, Valdris Prime was under complete human control. The planet's military was disbanded, its weapons were confiscated, and its leaders were in custody. The Valdris civilians were unharmed but thoroughly defeated. Admiral Park stood once again at the observation deck, looking down at the conquered world. Around him, his staff prepared reports on the captured technology, the rescued prisoners, and the evidence of Valdris war crimes. "What do we do with them?" asked Captain Youngmi Cho. "They're completely helpless now." Admiral Park thought carefully before answering. "We do what we always do. We show them that there's a better way. To live, the dragons had caught their prey. Now came the harder task of teaching the Valdris how to exist without threatening other species. Humanity had learned that lesson 200 years ago. Now it was time to pass that wisdom on to others. But first, the galaxy needed to understand what had just happened. Humanity had dismantled an empire in less than a month, not through cruelty or genocide, but through overwhelming skill and precision. They had shown that it was possible to fight a war without becoming monsters. The dragons were returning to sleep, but their message would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. 1 year after the massacre at New Busan, President Sujin Han stood before the Galactic Assembly on the neutral station of Harmony Point. Representatives from 47 species filled the Great Hall, all of them staring at the human leader with new eyes. A year ago, humanity had been considered a minor species, peaceful farmers and miners who posed no threat to anyone. Now they sat at the head table of galactic politics, their military power proven beyond any doubt. "Fellow sentient beings," President Han began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "A year ago, the Valdris hegemony attempted to exterminate my species. They believed humans were weak, defenseless, and easy to destroy. They were wrong." She activated a holographic display showing the ruins of New Busan Colony. The images were still painful to watch, even after a year. 50,000 dead humans, killed for no reason other than existing. "The Valdris killed our children first," President Han continued. "They wanted our parents to suffer before they died. They called us vermin, pests that needed to be eliminated. They planned to kill every human in the galaxy." The chamber was silent. Every representative had seen the recordings of human military power. They had watched human fleets dismantle the Valdris Empire in less than a month. They had seen weapons that could destroy planets and precision strikes that could disable entire fleets without killing a single civilian. Today, the Valdris live under human protection, President Han said. Their military is disbanded. Their leaders have been tried for their crimes. Their colonies are being rebuilt with human assistance. They are alive because we chose mercy over vengeance. Ambassador Jae-won-oh, seated at the human delegation table, watched the other representatives carefully, fear and respect warred in their expressions. Some species were calculating whether humanity might turn its weapons against them. Others were wondering if they could gain human protection for themselves. "But let me be clear," President Han continued, her voice hardening slightly. "Humanity's mercy is not weakness. Our choice to help rather than harm is not inability to fight. We could have destroyed the Valdris completely. We could have taken their worlds and enslaved their people. We chose not to because we believe in something better." She paused, letting her words sink in throughout the chamber. "However, our mercy has limits. Any species that attempts genocide will face the full weight of human military power. Any government that targets civilians will be removed. Any military that threatens peaceful settlements will be destroyed. This is not a threat. This is a promise." The crystalline representative, Vorthak, spoke from its position at the ancient species table. "President Han, your people have shown remarkable restraint. But the galaxy is curious. How powerful is humanity truly? What limits exist on your military capabilities?" President Han smiled. It was not a cruel smile, but it was not entirely warm either. "Our limits are the ones we impose on ourselves. We have weapons that could sterilize worlds, devices that could extinguish stars, and ships that could conquer half the galaxy. We choose not to use them because we believe in peace. But our choice to be peaceful should not be mistaken for inability to be otherwise. In the year since the war, humanity had revealed just enough of their capabilities to ensure peace without triggering a new arms race. The galaxy now knew that humans possessed technology that rivaled the most advanced civilizations, but they had also seen that humans preferred to use that technology for construction rather than destruction. Captain Minho Jung walked through the memorial gardens of New Busan, which had been rebuilt as a monument to the victims of Valdris genocide. The names of all 50,000 dead were inscribed in quantum crystals that would last until the end of the universe. Families came here to remember, to grieve, and to understand why humanity had chosen war. Captain, called Dr. Yoonji Park, approaching from the research center. She had survived the original attack and now directed the memorial's educational programs. The Valdris delegation has arrived for the remembrance ceremony. Captain Young nodded. Every year on the anniversary of the attack, Valdris representatives came to New Busan to honor the human dead. It was part of their rehabilitation, their learning to understand the cost of their actions. The current Valdris government was completely different from the one that had ordered the genocide. The old leaders had been tried and punished according to galactic law. The new leaders were younger Valdris who had opposed the war from the beginning. They came to New Busan not as conquerors but as students, learning from humanity how to build a civilization that did not require the destruction of others. The ceremony will begin in 1 hour, Dr. Park continued. Will you speak to them? I always do, Captain Young replied. He had been promoted to admiral after the war, then chose to return to captain rank so he could command the new peacekeeping vessels. He preferred protecting people to commanding fleets. The ceremony was simple and moving. Humans and Valdris stood together at the memorial wall, reading the names of the dead. The Valdris representatives spoke words of regret and commitment to ensuring such tragedy never happened again. After the ceremony, Captain Young addressed the young Valdris students who had come to learn about human history. Many of you were not alive when your people attacked our colonies, he said. You bear no guilt for those crimes, but you do bear responsibility for ensuring they never happen again. That is why you are here. That is why we teach. One young Valdris student raised her hand. Captain Young, why did humans spare our species? Your weapons could have destroyed us completely. Captain Young considered the question carefully. Because destroying you would have made us like the leaders who ordered your people to destroy us. Humanity learned long ago that the strongest response to evil is not more evil, but justice tempered with mercy. Meanwhile, across human space, the hidden military installations were being sealed once again. The Ghost Fleet returned to folded space, invisible and waiting. The Titan weapons were powered down and secured. Dragon Squadron pilots returned to their civilian lives, though they remained ready to fight if needed. Admiral Jin Ho-yoon supervised the deactivation of the Luna military complex. 50 years until the next inspection, he told engineer Dongwoo Nam. Hopefully we won't need to wake these systems again. Do you think the peace will last? Dongwoo asked. As long as other species remember what happened here, Admiral, Yoon replied. The Valdris made the galaxy understand that humanity's peaceful nature is a choice, not a limitation. That knowledge should prevent future conflicts. But humanity was not naive. They knew that power created temptation and that other species might eventually test human resolve. That was why Captain So Young Hwang continued to train new dragon pilots in secret. That was why Admiral Boram Lee maintained intelligence networks throughout the galaxy. That was why every human colony still contained hidden weapons and every human citizen still received military training. President Su Jin Han received daily reports on galactic affairs from her office on Earth. The intelligence was encouraging. 3 species that had been planning aggressive expansion had quietly abandoned those plans after studying human military capabilities. 2 territorial disputes had been resolved peacefully when both sides realized they did not want to risk human intervention. Most importantly, 6 species had approached humanity requesting assistance with their own defense problems. Humanity was becoming what they had always hoped to be: protectors rather than conquerors, shepherds rather than wolves. Ambassador Jae-won worked tirelessly to establish new diplomatic protocols that would prevent future genocides. The Valdris. War had shown that the galaxy needed stronger protections for civilian populations. Under human leadership, new laws were being written that would make it easier to intervene when innocent people were threatened. The key, he explained to his staff, is to make protection automatic and aggression costly. Species should know that attacking civilians will bring immediate consequences, while seeking peaceful solutions will bring immediate support. As the EDA first anniversary of the war's end approached, Captain Hyunwoo Kim, now Admiral of the Outer Rim Fleet, prepared his final report on humanity's military readiness. His ships patrolled the edges of human space, watching for threats, but also serving. As proof of human power, all systems secure, he wrote. Military capabilities proven and acknowledged by all galactic powers. Peaceful expansion continuing on schedule. The dragons sleep, but they dream of fire. Dr. Yoonji Park stood in her office at the New Busan Memorial Research Center, looking out at the rebuilt colony. Children played in the parks where their predecessors had died. Families lived in homes built on the sites of destruction. Life had returned to Kepler 442b, but it was life informed by memory. Her final words to the graduating class of alien students had become famous throughout the galaxy. We could have ruled you all. We chose instead to protect each other. Remember that the next time you mistake our kindness for weakness. The lesson of the Valdris War spread throughout the galaxy. Humanity was not weak, they were restrained. They were not defenseless, they were careful. They were not pacifists who could not fight. They were warriors who chose not to fight unless they had no other choice. And when they had no other choice, when innocent people were